Get this trash out of my sight! The words cracked like a whip across the marble chamber. Victor Donovan, an American billionaire with salt and pepper hair and a face sharpened by decades of ruthless deals, slammed his palm against the golden-trimmed table. A 12-year-old boy, the maid's son, froze in the middle of the grand hall. He clutched a silver tray so tightly his knuckles turned white. The polished teacup on it rattled against the saucer. Donovan's glare burned holes through the child. He leaned forward, his expensive suit tightening across broad shoulders. "You filthy little rat," he spat. "Do you even know where you are? This is a $500 million deal. Men of power are deciding the future of nations while you and your kind scrub their toilets." Laughter rippled from the shadows where aides and guards stood. One whispered cruelly to another, "He's just like his mother, born to clean up after real men." The boy bent down to pick up a folder that had slipped from the table. But before his hand touched it, Donovan's Italian leather shoe slammed down on the papers, scattering them further across the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. "Pathetic," Donovan hissed. "You'll never be anything more than dirt under my shoes." The sheikh, at the head of the table, Omar al-Rashid, draped in a flowing blue and gold cloak, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His dark eyes flicked toward the boy, then quickly back to Donovan, masking a flicker of unease. Donovan wasn't finished. His voice grew sharper, venom dripping with every word. "You don't speak. You don't think. You don't belong. Now get out before I have security drag you out like the stray dog you are." The boy's chest rose and fell, his small hands still clutching the tray. For a long moment, the entire room waited, mocking smiles frozen on faces, the sheikh's aides smirking, the maid at the back of the hall silently trembling for her child. Then, slowly, the boy lifted his head. His gaze met Donovan's, no words. Just eyes, dark, steady, unblinking. For the first time, Donovan faltered. Something in that look unsettled him. Something he couldn't name. The boy turned, collected the tray, and walked silently to the side of the room. No one noticed the way his eyes lingered on the contract spread across the golden table. No one noticed that while Donovan thundered and raged, the boy had been studying the papers. His mind catching details the men of power had overlooked, and no one, especially not Donovan, realized the truth. This worthless child knew every single word Omar al-Rashid had just whispered in Arabic. Every insult, every secret, every detail of a trap carefully buried in the deal. The hall fell quiet again as Donovan straightened his tie, masking his temper with a practiced smile. He turned to Omar, who now wore the calm mask of a seasoned negotiator. "Apologies," Donovan said, his voice smoothing over the rage. "Sometimes servants forget their place." Omar gave a faint smile, his thick gold ring tapping gently against the arm of his chair. "Children wander where they shouldn't, but shall we?" He gestured toward the documents, their pages heavy with ink and lies. Donovan nodded. His pen hovered over the dotted line. Cameras flashed. Assistants leaned forward. Centuries of oil and steel, of money and power, seemed to converge on this single moment. A $500 million signature, a handshake between empires, a future rewritten in ink. And just a few feet away, the maid's son stood silent, his young heart pounding. His mind replaying every Arabic word Omar had muttered when he thought no one was listening. The boy understood. He knew the trap. And in the days ahead, his voice would decide the fate of men who thought he was invisible. The scratching of the pen was seconds away from sealing $500 million into history when a voice cut through the silence. "Wait." All heads turned. The boy had stepped forward, his small hand raised, pointing directly at the contract. His voice didn't shake this time. It rang with a strange, quiet authority. Donovan blinked, his pen frozen above the dotted line. "What did you just say?" he demanded, disbelief twisting his tone. The boy's eyes flicked from Donovan to the sheikh. "That paper isn't what you think it is," he said, his finger still steady on the document. Gasps fluttered around the room. The maid at the back covered her mouth, terrified. Omar al-Rashid's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned, smooth as silk. "Ignore him," he said in English, waving a dismissive hand. "He is only a child." But Donovan leaned forward, curiosity warring with irritation. "What exactly do you mean, boy?" The boy stepped closer, his voice calm. Clause 14. The Arabic section at the bottom. It doesn't say joint partnership. It says transfer of controlling ownership. If you sign this, you're giving away your company. For a moment, silence choked the hall. Then came the laughter. One of Omar's aides barked out in Arabic, mocking the boy's pronunciation. Donovan chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. "A janitor's son lecturing me on contracts?" he scoffed. "You think I'd believe but the boy didn't flinch. His eyes burned with certainty. "Read it, or let someone else translate it. You'll see I'm telling the truth." And for the first time, Donovan hesitated. For a heartbeat, the room hung in silence. Then Sheikh Omar al-Rashid leaned back in his chair, his jeweled fingers steepling together, a practiced smile spreading across his face. "This is absurd," he said smoothly. His English was flawless, polished from years of international dealings. A child playing interpreter? "Surely you don't take this seriously, Mr. Donovan," but behind his calm exterior, Omar's pulse thudded. The boy's words had landed too precisely. Someone had taught him enough Arabic to pierce the veil. And that was dangerous. Donovan forced a chuckle, though unease flickered in his eyes. He tapped the contract with the tip of his pen. "Then you won't mind clarifying, Sheikh. What exactly does Clause 14 say?" Omar didn't blink. "It says what it has always said. Partnership, shared vision, prosperity for both sides. Nothing more." His voice was silk, but a bead of sweat glistened at his temple. The boy stepped forward again, his small frame dwarfed by the massive table. His mother gasped from the corner, whispering his name like a warning. But he didn't stop. "That's not true," he said firmly. His voice carried more weight than it should have, echoing in the gold-lined hall. "It says, Intikal al-Milk al-Akthariya." Donovan's brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" The boy looked straight at him. "Transfer of majority ownership. You wouldn't be partners. You'd be surrendering control. He would own your company." The words dropped like stones into water. For the first time, Donovan's hand slipped from the contract. He stared at the pages as if they had turned into a snake coiled before him. Omar's composure cracked just enough to show irritation. "Ridiculous," he snapped. "This is childish meddling. The clause is standard. Translation errors happen." But Donovan wasn't laughing anymore. His jaw tightened. He pushed the contract toward one of his own aides. "Read it, word for word, out loud." The aide, fluent in Arabic, scanned the text. His face paled. He looked at Donovan, then back at Omar. Slowly, haltingly, he confirmed the boy's claim. "Sir, the child is correct. It says transfer of controlling ownership to Al-Rashid Holdings." The air in the room thickened. Cameras that had been ready to capture a triumphant signature now recorded a standoff on the brink of collapse. Donovan leaned back, his face hardening, realization dawning like a storm cloud. If he had signed, if he had trusted, he would have lost everything. His company, his legacy, his empire, and all because of one buried clause, a trap laced with legal Arabic too subtle for his American lawyers to catch. His eyes flicked to the boy. The same child he had just called worthless, the same boy he had nearly thrown out. Donovan's voice was low now, edged with fury, not at the boy, but at the man across from him. "You tried to steal my company." Omar al-Rashid's mask of calmness slipped, just for a second. His eyes hardened, calculating, like a predator caught in the open. The deal was unraveling, and it was all because the Maid's son had spoken. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The air in the gilded chamber grew heavy, crackling with unspoken tension. Two guards at the door shifted uneasily, their hands hovering near their weapons. Attendants exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to drag the boy out or wait for orders. The child, however, stood his ground, his chin raised, his eyes locked on the men who had nearly signed away a fortune. Victor Donovan rose from his chair, the contract crumpling under his fist. His voice, once sharp with arrogance, now trembled with controlled fury. You think you can trick me? Burying a theft inside my own signature? He glared across the table at Sheikh Omar al-Rashid. Answer me, damn it! The sheikh spread his hands slowly, his composure visibly straining. This is a misunderstanding. Translation errors occur. Legal language is complicated. Enough lies! Donovan thundered, slamming his palm on the golden table. Papers scattered like frightened birds. Behind them, a cry broke the silence. The maid, her apron still damp from cleaning, her face pale with fear, stepped forward. Her hands shook, but her voice, though trembling, carried across the chamber. It's my fault, she whispered. I taught him. All eyes turned to her. She swallowed hard, her gaze darting between her son and the powerful men before her. I wanted him to know more than I did. I practiced Arabic at home, reading scraps of newspapers, listening to broadcasts. He listened. He learned. I never thought... Her words faltered under the sheikh's burning glare. Donovan's expression shifted. For the first time, he saw the boy not as a servant's son, but as the reason he still had a company to protect. The realization carved itself into his face. Omar's mask of diplomacy finally cracked. His voice, stripped of charm, was edged with venom. You Americans never understand. Wealth is war. Power is taken, not shared. If you were too blind to read your own contracts, then you deserve to be conquered. His words slithered through the chamber like smoke, chilling every listener. Donovan's jaw clenched. The arrogance, the deception, it all crystallized. He had been moments away from losing everything, not to bad luck, but to a carefully crafted scheme. And the only reason he hadn't signed away his empire was because a 12-year-old boy had dared to speak. The billionaire looked at the child again, truly seeing him. The boy stood tall, unflinching, his mother trembling behind him, and Donovan understood. This wasn't weakness. This was courage. Power had shifted in the palace that day. Not by wealth, not by titles, but by truth spoken at the right moment. The empire of Omar al-Rashid was cracking, and it was cracking under the weight of a child's words. The silence that followed Omar's outburst was deafening. The weight of his words, his open admission of conquest, hung in the golden chamber like smoke after an explosion. Victor Donovan straightened, his fury sharpening into icy resolve. He turned to his aides. Terminate the signing, immediately. His voice carried the authority of a man who had clawed his way to the top and now stood on the brink of ruin, only to be pulled back. The aides scrambled, scooping up contracts, shoving pens and papers into briefcases. Cameras that had been prepared to capture a triumphant handshake now recorded chaos. The grand moment was collapsing, and every lens caught the truth. A deal built on deception, shattered by a boy's defiance. Omar al-Rashid rose, his cloak sweeping behind him like a storm cloud. Rage burned in his eyes, though his voice remained low, cold, deadly. Do you know what you've done? He hissed. You've insulted me, humiliated me before the world. Donovan didn't flinch. No, he said flatly. You humiliated yourself, and I owe my survival not to lawyers, not to advisors. His gaze shifted to the boy, but to him, the child's breath caught. His mother clutched his shoulders as if bracing him against the fury in the room. Omar sneered. You think this changes anything? I have oil. I have governments in my pocket. A child cannot stop me. Donovan stepped closer, lowering his voice but never his eyes. A child just did. The room froze. Guards and aides stood paralyzed, caught between two titans of wealth, yet it was the smallest figure who had broken the balance. Omar's composure crumbled. With a final glare, he swept from the chamber, his entourage scrambling after him. The echo of his footsteps rang hollow against marble floors that had once magnified his power. When the doors slammed shut, the room exhaled. The storm had passed, but its impact remained. Donovan turned to the boy. For once, his voice softened, stripped of arrogance. What's your name? The boy hesitated, then answered firmly. Amir. Donovan nodded, the name etching itself into his memory. Amir, today you saved more than a company. You saved an empire, tears welled in his mother's eyes. She pulled her son close, relief and pride mixing in her trembling embrace. Outside, the world would soon hear whispers of what had happened, that a $500 million deal had crumbled in an Arabian palace because of a servant's child. Some would call it scandal. Others, miracle. But for those in that gilded hall, one truth was undeniable: power